What's going on, everybody? RJ Ochoa here from SB Nation's bloggingtheboys.com. Hope all is well wherever you are. Hope you're happy, safe, healthy, and I trust that you are rather pissed off. If I could have you help me out right away, if it isn't obvious, traveling, not in my normal home office setup situation, and I was having some audio connectivity issues. So if you are watching, whether you're live on the Bleach Report app or on the Blogging the Boys YouTube channel, please just let me know that you can hear me. I think you should be able to. If you can't, then this was all for naught, pretty much like the last two seasons of Dallas Cowboys football that we're subjected to watching and torturing ourselves with. It is Sunday, December 14th. 2025. This is our post-game show here on the Blog on the Boys YouTube channel. As noted, it is presented in partnership with Bleach Report, so you can watch it either their app or on our YouTube channel. My name is RJ Ochoa, and you can follow me on social media on any level of social media. Just search for RJ Ochoa there. Links are down in the description below if you're watching on YouTube. Thank you, everybody, for letting me know that you can hear me. Traveling with my family in Arizona for the week. And week that is to come. This kind of started it, and I'm very I talk a lot about how blessed I am and how fortunate I am to do what I do, and sometimes that involves doing some different things, and it's Christmas time and juggling holiday stuff. I think you all understand that, and so games like this kind of tend to stick out in our memory when we look back, right? Like these Christmas moments. I remember a lot that 2013 season finale that Dallas lost to Philadelphia. Some of that was the Kyle Orton of it all. Some of it was obviously Tony Romo getting hurt the week before during the win against Washington. I think this is going to be one of those. I think that when you look at what happened to the Dallas Cowboys on Sunday night, it was, and I recognize this is an easy place to jump to, but it was in many ways a microcosm of the way that they approached the 2025 season and the way that they've approached a lot of seasons throughout the course of the drought. Not all, but a lot. And what I mean by that is they were asleep at the wheel to start, and they were too sleepy in certain respects, and they did not capitalize when they had proper opportunities to. And by the time they got fully awake and ready and willing to be a part of the overall conversation, in this case, in some macro cases, a season at large, 2025 is a good example of that with the trade deadline and whatnot, it was just too late. And this wasn't even, fiddling around with a really good team. This was fiddling around with a team that was really bad, and a team that, look, I'm not here to make fun of JJ McCarthy, a team and a quarterback specifically that had become kind of a meme, just kind of become synonymous with meme culture throughout the NFL. And you let that quarterback, you let that team, you let them just run, walk, waltz all over you, and you didn't seem at all inclined to stop that. And that's just kind of, I think that's the most difficult part of it all to take. And that's why dynasty being born and existing, the Eagles having the success that they've had over the last, whatever you want to call it, they haven't let any of that wake them from their slumber that they value too much. And so as a result, they are just going to kind of be here for the rest of time, maybe, is kind of what it feels like at this point. I apologize if the connection is spotty. I think, judging by all the comments, everything is okay. Appreciate those of you who are watching live. I know a lot of you watch this after the fact. Not normal setup, not normal equipment, not normal, et cetera, et cetera. Same normal football team. I think that what makes me the most upset about what happened on Sunday night for the Cowboys, and there's a lot, to be clear, right? There's a lot to kind of, if we tug at that thread, but what upsets me the most, and this is admittedly football cliche type stuff, is this team talked all week long, and understandably so, about controlling what they could control, and just taking care of what was in front of them and not trying to overdo, not trying to press, just trying to understand that they had 4 games left and wanting to win all of them. And the first one of the 4 was the Cowboys coming off of the mini bye, was the Cowboys at home, was the Cowboys getting ready to play 2 straight games at home, was the Cowboys as a home favorite. They were favored against the Minnesota Vikings. The original opening line, it didn't move, but it was 6.5 points. And they got to do all of these things against a team that on the day they played the game found out that they were mathematically, formally, and officially eliminated from contention. This was not, the 3-headed dragon, right? This was a little puppy. Of a situation, not talking about the Vikings as a team. This was a little puppy of a situation. And had you won, you would have kept hope alive. And that hope may have ultimately, been proven to be meaningless. The Eagles may not, slip up the way that the Cowboys needed them to. They need them to even more so now, but that you couldn't even do that you couldn't even take step one when step one was so simple and so basic and so puppy-like in that regard. Dude, that's a difficult pill to swallow as a fan. And I think as a person who has any level of interest in this team, and I think that's why it's going to be such a hard loss to get over. Let's see here. B Money _ B Money. So that's B Money twice on YouTube says, I knew it was over when 9 griddled in. It is funny to me that 9, who is JJ McCarthy, for anyone who is not caught up with, I guess, meme culture in the NFL, 9 is JJ McCarthy. And once upon a time, the Cowboys and Jason Witten tried to force us to call Tony Romo Niner. There was a point in time where that was a real thing, so that 9 was the quarterback who ultimately ended this season. Is kind of funny. In case, let's see, Luke Parker on YouTube says McCarthy is trash and diced us up. I appreciate those of you, by the way. Who was it that said the tide rolls in Texas? Says video and audio cutting in and out. If cutting the video will help, I'm fine. Appreciate it. I think we're okay just based on the number of comments, number of activity. So it looks like we're good. Appreciate, again, everybody for understanding the travel situation. I'll be back to normal for the final 3 games of the regular season. And there are only going to be 3 games left for the Cowboys. ESPN puts the Cowboys playoff probability odds at 1%. The Cowboys are technically alive. If we're playing the technically, literally Dumb and Dumber meme, you're telling me there's a chance game. The Cowboys do technically still have life across the 2025 season relative to a playoff berth. They are out of the picture from a wild card standpoint, but they could theoretically still win the NFC East. If the Cowboys won out, which is a proposition that you certainly can't say with any kind of comfortability, but if that happened and if the Eagles lost out, the Cowboys would win the NFC East. But so that means that any future Cowboys loss or any future Eagles win eliminates the Cowboys from full and total playoff contention, obviously, because the only path left for them at this point is as an NFC East winner. And so that is just a bummer. That is a hole that the Cowboys dug for themselves. They have nobody to blame but themselves. And that's kind of the situation that it's been with them for almost now officially going to be 30 years at this point in time. And look, I think we all understood. Like I'll speak for myself here. I have a lot of content out there that was saying things like, even if the Cowboys won out and missed the playoffs, I would really look at this second half of the season with a lot of pride and a lot of positivity and a lot to take away. And I'm definitely really excited about the draft and multiple first-round picks, right? That kind of goes without saying. But that involved the Cowboys winning out. I don't think any of us foresaw. I think we thought that maybe it was going to be difficult for them to win out, certainly. I think we thought that maybe they would lose to the Chargers. I don't think that anybody realistically, I know that the people who are your Facebook friends post their memes and say things like, oh, I knew they were going to lose and all that stupid stuff. But I don't think any of us envisioned them looking this flat. Now, does looking this flat completely undo the good that was the 3-game winning streak? No, but time will provide more context for all that. I think it already has, right? I think we look at those wins, and the first one was the Raiders, the second was the Eagles, that were maybe still, but at least at the time were dealing with their identity crisis, and the Chiefs, who were really, really, really falling apart, and obviously have been officially eliminated from playoff contention themselves. But this does take some steam out. I think this does make the taste a little bit big, because it's hard to look back on the positives when you just couldn't turn them into anything. And that's one of the more macro criticisms of this franchise and of this organization throughout the course of their drought. I mean, we gave you a little bit. We gave you hope. We gave you benefit of the doubt. And I stand by that. I think it was logical to give those things to this team and this franchise and this organization. But they burned it up the very first moment that they could, which is just the toughest of tough scenes. Thank you, J-Dog, for the super chat. Says every quarterback playing against an Eberflus coach team earns a new contract. He makes them look like John Elway. Yeah, I will be straight up with all of you. I was very excited about the Matt Eberflus hire. I thought very highly of his previous stint with the Cowboys. I thought he should have been the defensive coordinator of the Cowboys back then, but the Cowboys were insisting on Rod Marinelli still holding that title. His time in Indianapolis, Matt Eberflus's time spoke for itself. Obviously, his time in Chicago did not. And so I really was excited. And I maintain that there should be a level of grace, a level of contextual grace, in that Micah Parsons was traded away and all the things that we all know. That being said, I don't know how you can bring Matt Eberflus back. I don't know how you can do that and expect anyone to take you seriously. I do not want the Cowboys to have a fourth defensive coordinator in as many years, which is what moving on from Matt Eberflus would mean. But I hate to say, look at the Eagles offense, right? Like the Eagles, swap out offensive coordinators all the time. And I recognize that that's been part of their problem this year. But my point in bringing that up as an example, and I hate to do that with the Eagles specifically, is they're unafraid to do so. They're unafraid to say, well, it's going to be, X amount of coordinators in X amount of years. Okay, so what? Figure it out. I'm at that point now. I'm at that point where I'm willing to say, you know what? Everything I felt, I stand by it. I do think he was handed a raw deal. I don't want yet another defensive coordinator, but I think that we've just seen way too much. I think it's too much to go down this path again, even if you presume full and total health and full and total offseason work. Or obviously Quinnen Williams, his first offseason with the team, and DeMarvion Overshown being healthy, Savon Ravel being healthy, whatever additions come by way of the draft, and free agency, LOL. I don't think you can do it. I think you have to prove that you're taking this seriously, the way the Cowboys did in 2021 when they moved on from Mike Nolan. They brought in Dan Quinn because they had a chance to do so, and that really worked for them. And they've been struggling, obviously, ever since he left, even though they struggled a little bit before he left, but people don't like to talk about that. On YouTube, 5 Trigger Trey says, this team is so unserious, man. How do they let us down so embarrassing every year? It is a Murphy's Law proposition, right? Like they find new and innovative, right? The Dallas Cowboys, if you think that they have embarrassed you in the most embarrassing way possible, if you think that your friends or your family or your loved ones or your coworkers or your classmates have gotten the jokes off on you in all the ways that are possible, all the permutations that exist under the sun, whoa, Miss Lippy, the Dallas Cowboys will find a way. I think we all could have squared if they had, had their season, been over by a loss against the Los Angeles Chargers. If this exact same thing had happened at the hands of, a team that's going to be in the playoffs and a team that's building more respect across the NFL, right? But that it happened against a team that so many people were dunking on, right? I know the Vikings beat the Commanders last week, but for the most part, the Vikings for the second half of the season have just been a collective joke across the NFL in terms of people talking about them on the internet. And that you let that team, that was the team who stuck a fork in you, right? Like that was the team who got to laugh and party. It's kind of like, on Sunday, the Arizona Cardinals got destroyed by the Houston Texans, and that was their 11th loss in their 12 most recent games. Their one win, to be clear, the Arizona Cardinals have lost 11 of their last 12 games, and their one win in that respect was against the Dallas Cowboys. So you look at the Cardinals and the Vikings, these teams that are moribund and down, and they're going to look back on 2025 as years that were lost and they need to improve upon. And they're going to look back and say, but we beat the crap out of the Cowboys, right? We got to have some fun at AT&T Stadium in prime time, right? We embarrassed them all. That flight home, that was a lot of fun. It's just amazing. It's an amazing phenomenon that unfortunately we are very, very well accustomed to. Bree Guy 75 on YouTube says, how can we defend this team anymore? See, like I stand by some of the belief that I offer in the Dallas Cowboys. I think that they, not everything is bad. It's ultimately my point. I think that we kind of, it's impossible to have a nuanced discussion about the Cowboys on the internet. To be clear, if we're giving a full, a grade that's on either end of the spectrum, if you have to answer the question, are the Dallas Cowboys a success or a failure? They're a failure, right? If those are your only two options. But there's nuance, there's context there, right? The Joneses love to talk about, and this is objectively fair, how throughout the drought, they are one of the more successful teams in the regular season. And that's not me saying that regular season is what matters the most, right? We all understand this. My point in bringing that up is you could argue this is not necessarily true in this specific moment, but they have had their 5 worst days across the last 30 years at the 5 worst possible moments. And I understand that those days are massive and way more and carry more weight than the other whatever it is. But that being said, they're not trash for all of the last 30 years. So there are ways to defend the team, right? The quarterback is amazing. The wide receivers are incredible. They have done things this season that were deserving of the praise and the props and the kudos that we gave to them. But they make it impossible to have conversations with people who are unwilling to talk about things this way, because it ultimately and invariably turns into, yeah, Jerry, same old, we them boys, right? 30 years, right? We know that. And so that's the cross we have to bear, right? I've said many times that there's a lot of millennials on the internet, right? If you're a millennial Cowboys fan, you kind of have the worst of it all, right? Because you're too young to have fully lived and experienced the glory days of the 90s, but you're old enough to be cognizant of them and have memories of them, or maybe shared memories with family members or whatever. And you've grown up in the 21st century and the evolutions of technology and whatever. So you've got nothing but the negatives that come with their fame and notoriety. And so that is the worst spot to be in. If you're, 45 or older, kind of around that range, you remember it was a good time, obviously, when the 90s Cowboys were dominating. But if you're south of that, it's just, man, you're down pretty bad. On Bleacher Report, Ocean Sentinel says, let's talk about football IQ. Football IQ is when you don't dress Diggs because he's not doing it the right way, but constantly play 59 who can't read or call defensive signals. What a genius. I don't really I don't have a passionate take on Trayvon Diggs thing. And maybe that's just the season, sort of developing or wearing me down, and right, just kind of some different attrition from it. But I think that if you read between the tea leaves, and to be the tea leaves are like very obvious, but it seems the Cowboys are just done with Trayvon Diggs. And can you argue that not fielding him, if the hypothetical conspiracy theories are true, is detrimental to the state and the success of the football team? Sure, that can be argued. But I think that this is one of those situations that, on Sunday night, the NBC broadcast played the Friends theme song, and this, like it was said in that song by the Rembrandts, this situation was DOA, right? This situation was dead on arrival for the Cowboys. Remember, back at training camp, in the opening press conference to start the time in Oxnard, Jerry Jones openly doubting whether or not giving Trayvon Diggs an extension was the right move. And you could talk about what led to that and what was the catalyst. Was it the dissolution of the relationship with Micah Parsons? Was it Trayvon not showing up to the offseason workouts and therefore being eligible and ultimately subject to the fines that the Cowboys instituted, right? Like, whatever. But my point, or I think the collective point, is that relationship has gone south. And so is it illogical that the Cowboys won't play him if he is fully healthy or if he's ready to play football? Sure. I think that argument makes sense in a vacuum. We live in a vacuum with this team. We live in the upside down. We live down the rabbit hole. Like, down is up and up is down and left is right and everything is dumb and broken and silly. And so that's just that's the tip of the silly conversations that we have to have. I also think that those types of things happen more across the NFL than with just the Dallas Cowboys, but this was obviously a very visible example of that situation. On YouTube, Shane says Diggs hasn't seriously contributed in 2 years. He's a non-factor for the Cowboys going forward. See, like, and that, like, you could certainly argue that point. Like, there's context to it, right? Like, it's I don't think the Cowboys are. I think the Cowboys have actively sabotaged their football team in a lot of ways, but I don't think that they're like, hell yeah, we want to suck. Let's keep Trayvon off the field. I don't think that that's happening in any way, shape, or form here. Bree Guy 75 on YouTube says, for the haters, it will always go back to the no Super Bowl in 30 years. Yeah, and they're like, here's the thing, like, is it really annoying when Cowboys haters or the people in your life who like to stir the pot with you say, like, yeah, the Cowboys haven't won the Super Bowl in 30 years? It's annoying. It's super annoying. Like, we've heard all the arguments, right? Like, we've entertained it all. We've argued against it many different times. Maybe you have reached a point of apathy where, like, whatever, I really don't care anymore. Just say what you want. Get the jokes off. I've heard them a million different times. Like, we've all heard the same jokes. Get new material. People are like, oh yeah, the VHS tapes and whatever. That being said, it is something that is a reality, right? Like, I do find it to be annoying, and I find it to be frustrating, and I find it to be particularly annoying when you can't have a nuanced conversation with somebody about the drought era for the Cowboys, the drought that Stephen Jones didn't believe existed almost a year ago. But it is ultimately what it comes down to, because, history is written by the winners. I mean, like, and that's obtuse and that's very simplified, and I don't like things that are obtuse and simplified, but that is the case here. This is a sport, in general, but therefore a sport where history is written by the winners. And the larger your trophy case, the bigger your pen. And so the Cowboys don't have a single one to go off of anymore. I mean, they are just living in the past as far as the most important things that define the legacies relative to this game. And they have the ability to stop that, or at least to try very hard to stop that. And they don't seem willing to do that. At least they haven't for a very, very long time now. J-Dog, thank you for the super chat. Says, might as well play Diggs next week. What do we have to lose? The season was over when Eberflus rushed 3 guys on 4th down and 3. Yeah, I think that, it'll be interesting to see, right? Because in case you're unaware, the Eagles can clinch the NFC East with their next win or with the next Cowboys loss. And chronologically speaking, following the Cowboys loss to Minnesota, the next game of consequence in that regard is the Eagles playing the Commanders, and they play on Saturday, the Saturday that we're coming up to, the Saturday of the college football playoffs. It's going to be an amazing day. Hope you get some amazing food, have an amazing time. So that being said, the Eagles can officially eliminate the Cowboys from playoff contention. Shout out Dan Quinn if that's ultimately what happens here. And so will that affect or impact what we see from the Cowboys on the Sunday after, the day later, or the day after? I can't even put words together properly here, right? Like, will that impact the Cowboys? Will that affect their decision-making? I don't think so. And the reason I don't think so, if I can put on my tinfoil conspiracy hat here for a second, for any of you who perhaps fairly are going to say, rest the players, don't take any chances. Well, my friends, Netflix paid a pretty penny to have some NFL games on Christmas Day. And the game for the Cowboys after what would theoretically be the second game where they were mathematically eliminated from playoff contention is going to do all sorts of streaming record numbers and whatever on Christmas Day on Netflix. So there is no way that the Cowboys are going to purposefully, with all due respect, throw Joe Milton out on Christmas Day on the road against Washington to play the Commanders in a game that's going to be seen by all sorts of people. And again, sort of redefine how the NFL establishes their streaming negotiations and whatnot. So if that's how you feel, I hate to break the fourth wall or tell you that I don't want to say who isn't real this time of year, but that's how the sausage gets made relative to the league that we all love so much. Siegfried on YouTube says, us haters only bring up the drought when the narrative gets shoved in our face because of this year is different every year. I'll believe when I see it. Siegfried, let me talk to you, my friend. Look, I understand that there are a lot of Cowboys fans in the world, and I love them all. I'm very grateful to them all. But that being said, because the Cowboys fan base is so large, you can find an opinion or a take or a stance for every idea. I am in no way narcissistic enough to believe that I speak on behalf of a majority of Cowboys fans, but I'm here to tell you that if you are going to say, well, I've seen Cowboys fans saying X, yeah, that's because there's a Cowboys fan saying everything. So if you believe, or if you're a Cowboys hater and you're annoyed because Cowboys fans say this year's our year, this year's different, nobody feels that way. And I'm not, again, trying to speak on behalf of anybody other than myself. I don't think that a lot of people feel that way. That's the way I'll put it. I think a lot of people recognize and have reckoned with who this team is and where the leadership has put them willfully and intentionally. Some could argue maliciously. I think that a lot of Cowboys fans have seen the forest through the trees, so to speak, and understand that we're just all kind of stuck on this ride. Like, Willy Wonka's at the front telling us there's no way of knowing where we're going. We're on this chocolate river. Who knows what's going to happen, right? Grandpa Joe and I are going to go burp some bubbles to come down from the ceiling. But there's not, I don't believe, at least a majority who is feeling like, oh man, it didn't happen in 2025, but watch out, 2026 is the year. I will tell you, I think the Cowboys will be better in 2026. I think that they are well positioned, but that is not to blindly say, like, we them boys, watch out, 2026 is when it's going to happen. Most people, in my personal opinion, don't seem to feel that way. Let's see here. H. Cruz says, we done, pack it up. That's kind of the way things sort of seem to feel around here. On Bleacher Report, RB Cowboy says this is beyond sad. It's very, very, very sad. It's just the saddest of sad things. Trey on YouTube says, RJ, I'm a very nice guy and a very good Christian person, but Sally, it's true. Okay, I don't want to read that comment. I don't like going there. I'm sorry I read that out loud. No offense to you, Trey Dorch. I'm just really sad that our football team is bad, right? Like, I'm just really, really bummed, right? It's such a bummer. Look, we all love the Dallas Cowboys. We give a lot of time and attention and resources to the Cowboys, right? And however you divvy that up for yourself. And so it's a bummer, right? It's a bummer when they don't, put things together the way that we want them to, right? It's a bummer when they fall flat. It's a bummer when they have an opportunity. I mean, when they were fighting the current, right? Even if the Cowboys had won on Sunday night against Minnesota, they would still be facing a steep uphill battle, but that you ruined it. You didn't even get to watch us see you make the fight. You know what I mean? Like, this thing's over at round one. You know what I mean? It's such a hollow thing. It's such a bitter pill to swallow to see you say, oh, you know what? The idea of 10 rounds, we don't have it in us at this point in time. And I don't fault them for not having it in them at some point, because they all are dealing with the circus. They all are dealing with this. I mean, it's a long season. It's a tough sport, right? This is a hard thing to do. But I don't think that any fan is irrational or wrong or a bad fan for feeling the way that they're feeling at this point in time. Charles says, we were down when the Cardinals beat us. I agree. Here's my thing. This is a bit long-winded, but this is how I believe things are going, or at least these are my 2 cents. I believe that the Cowboys were as close as they have been throughout the drought era at the end of the 2023 season. I'm not telling you that team was better than 2018 or 2016 or 2014 or 2007 or whichever one of the drought teams was your favorite. I'm not here to argue that point. What I'm here to argue is that team was so close. That team was so good. And that team got embarrassed in the worst possible way, in the most embarrassing way possible, in the wild card round against the Packers. And that broke them. And they are still not all the way back together. They have gotten off the mat a bit, but they spent the entire 2024 season, not even season, they spent the entire 2024 calendar year laying on the mat, and not even moping about laying on the mat, but laying on the mat and just like twiddling their thumbs and be like, oh, we're laying on the mat right here. And then in 2025, they said, you know what? Maybe we'll get up, after they were silly about it a little bit some more. Like, think about the way this season started. This season started when the Cowboys waited a week to move on from Mike McCarthy, right? And then they found Brian Schottenheimer through a process that was whatever. And I think that, Sunday night was not great for him, but I think that we all feel good about that, after seeing this whole thing. Again, Sunday night was not great. But then, they built up some goodwill and built up some positive equity by being active in free agency by way of, free agents or veteran trades and whatnot. They had a draft that we were, pleased with at that point in time. They traded for George Pickens. And we were feeling like you were turning that ship around, but then they played their stupid games with Micah Parsons and undid it all. And training camp was fully and totally dominated by that entire storyline, only for them to trade him away 7 days before the season began. So this season has been under fire from the very beginning. And I don't mean the very beginning as in week one. I don't mean the very beginning as when they showed up to Oxnard when Jerry Jones trashed Terrence Steele and Trayvon Diggs. I mean back to when they waited and dragged their feet to move on from Mike McCarthy. They just procrastinated and procrastinated and procrastinated after procrastinating all throughout the 2024 calendar year. At some point, they have to fully stand up and get up off the mat and say, it's time to act like competent adults. And maybe 2026 is that. Famous last words, I know. But this whole thing, and we could go even further back. We could go back to how they should have extended Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb at the end of the 2022 seasons. This has been about a half decade's worth of mess that has just accrued interest on top of itself. And they are still buried underneath it. And until they decide to just swallow their pride and do some serious things about it, it's going to continue to haunt them in some way, shape, or form. On YouTube, Romo Racer says, disappointing end to the season, yes, although I'm particularly honoring of this team for the resilience they demonstrated after the loss of Marshawn. Prayers up for 94. I completely agree with that. I think that's really well said. I'm not wise enough to offer anything other than I think we all are impressed with how the points of leadership and the players and everybody involved with the team handled an incredibly tragic situation, how they continue to handle and navigate it. Obviously, there's no time in which you're just done with that. It's something that is ongoing for the rest of time. On YouTube, Trey says, when you have a family running a team that cares about money over field success, our Cowboys will never win. Look at Philly, San Francisco, Buffalo, Kansas City. They want the best players no matter the record. Yeah, I mean, I think we'll see this offseason. I think the Chiefs will be hell-bent. The Chiefs are going to say, oh, gosh, we missed the playoffs. That was horrible. We never want to do that ever again. Think about it. The Cowboys are going to miss the playoffs. It's not official yet, but the Cowboys are going to miss the playoffs in 2 straight seasons. They obviously were not there in 2024 and obviously not there or not going to be there in 2025. It's been a bit. It's been a bit since the Cowboys last missed the playoffs in consecutive years. I'm going to vamp for a second while you try to kind of research your mind and say, when was it? When was it? When was it? It was, lo and behold, shocker here, the last time they did this exact same sort of stupid thing in terms of sequence relative to the highest point of leadership on the football team, not in the front office. It was 2019 when they sent Jason Garrett into a lame duck year, the final year of his contract. The second time they did that, Jason Garrett, people forget that happened in general, let alone that it happened twice. They missed the playoffs in 2019, and then they missed the playoffs in the first year of Mike McCarthy's tenure. And obviously, Dak Prescott's injury, the COVID year, there were a lot of things going on. Another team tragedy again. But my point is, what a shock that if you send one coach into a contract year in a lame duck situation, that creates turmoil that ripples into the next year, and that it's very difficult to imagine any person, Mike McCarthy or Brian Schottenheimer, whoever you think was or is awesome or less bad, right? It's impossible for them to jump in and just pick up and be awesome right away. It's a very, very difficult thing. But that was the last time the Cowboys missed the playoffs in consecutive seasons. And it was the exact same situation that they are in right now. And they learned nothing about it. And they will probably learn nothing about it in the future because that's the way things go around here. On YouTube, thank you for the super chat here. It says, kind of relieved. They showed me tonight any hope I had them to be serious this season is null. Retool with the draft capital and trust Shoddy next season to reevaluate through a normal offseason. I like this, right? I think, and look, I fully understand and recognize that the words I'm about to say are going to sound like cope to a lot of people, but I do believe that it's fair, it's objective to say that Brian Schottenheimer and Cowboys leadership in terms of their football operations with a full offseason without the dumb games of his hiring and no, there's no massive contract situation outside of George Pickens, which is massive in and of itself, but it's unique in that the worst case scenario is him being franchise tagged, and there are deadlines to that. He can't hold out all the way through training camp, unlike Micah or CD or Dak or whatever. I mean, you get my point. It is different. So I do kind of believe that this group will learn from 2025. And I hope, like I always do, that the front office will learn and that they will realize that they, have to do things differently, because they're going to continue to set up coach after coach, quarterback after quarterback. They're going to continue to set them up poorly. They're going to continue to set them up behind the eight ball. They're going to continue to set them up with disadvantages. When you look across the NFL, and there are all sorts of coaches and quarterbacks who are set up with inordinate advantages, and we're always jealous of them as Cowboys fans. And I will tell you, the Rorschach test, the litmus test, however you want to put it, the moment that we are going to know is about 3 months from now, when we find out what the Cowboys do with George Pickens. If the Cowboys place the franchise tag on George Pickens, I won't say that will officially mean that this is going to be the same sort of stuff that it's been in the past. But if the Cowboys get an extension done with George Pickens before the deadline to place the franchise tag on him, like they did with Osa Digizua last year, if they get that deal done, I will sit here and say, I was wrong. I did not trust you, and you have proven that you are a little bit different, right? I'm not going to give them my full and total trust, but if they get that done, it will be proof that they have learned something as a result of their stupid game. The obviously, learning thing being that you win stupid prizes. But if they play this out the way they did with Micah and CD and Dak multiple times over, and they place the franchise tag on George Pickens, and we go through the entire spring and early part of the summer, and they say it's just a placeholder, we're going to figure things out, and they get to mid-July, which is the deadline that you have obviously with players who have the franchise tag placed upon them, and they don't get the deal done, they will prove to us that all of the goodwill and good benefit of the doubt that we gave them and assumed them to have was false, was ill, was not legitimate, and we will know once again beyond a shadow of a doubt that what we saw in 2025 to some degree was just a bit of a mirage. Let's see here. Brian says, imagine if we'd hired Sean Payton, that would be sick, a real coach. I don't know. I'm not going to go down that road, but either way. Let's see here. JJ the Bot says, Jerry will not change his ways. Pickens is definitely getting tagged. I hope I'm wrong. I really do, but I think I agree with you ultimately. I think the other thing, there are a lot of ways that we're going to be able to tell how serious this team is taking the offseason. And unfortunately, we're now at a place where the offseason is kind of the main focus, right? Because the Cowboys are basically out of the playoff picture. But what the Cowboys do, and look, I want nothing but the best for Matt Eberflus, but what the Cowboys do there is going to be instructive to all of us as to how seriously they're taking this. I don't ever want to call for someone to be fired. And maybe the solution isn't firing him, but doing something else, providing some sort of help, right? Like I'm open. I'm an open book to that idea. I recognize that there's a lot of you who aren't going to feel that way relative to this situation. I'm not here to argue about that. But my point is, if they just simply say, we're not going to make any changes, we're just going to trust that it's going to be better in 2026, that would be pretty hollow, right? Like that would be pretty lame. That would be a really hard thing to sell to people. So what the Cowboys do with Matt Eberflus, however that ultimately looks, they have to do something. It is truly the Jim Halpert talking to Michael Scott. You just can't sit there. You've got to do something here. Again, that's something I'm not going to speak for anyone other than myself. I'm open. I'm open to suggestions. I'm open to alternative methods. I'm open to something creative, right? If you have a creative proposal, I'll hear you out. But if you just sit there and run it back in 2026 because reasons, that's going to speak pretty loudly. I agree with you on Jimbo that improving defense is more important than keeping Pickens, but they could both. They should do both. That's a bold idea, in my personal opinion. Okay, I appreciate everybody for powering through with me in terms of the unique environment. Like I said, I'm traveling with my family in Arizona for the week, so looking forward to it. But even though I'm in Arizona, there will be a steady stream of content, as there always is, here on the Blog on the Boys YouTube channel. On Monday, I'll have some day after thoughts. I'll put that together at some point. On Tuesday, I'm scheduled to speak with Laura Rutledge, my fellow Gator. Once again, she joined us about a month ago, so really looking forward to that. Going to talk to her about some Cowboys things as well. We got a whole bunch more fun coming. Got another Madden simulation. The season rolls on. I know. But even when the season ends, I'm still here, right? Even when the season ends, we're still going to be here talking about the Dallas Cowboys 24/7, 365. So if you haven't yet, if you're on Bleach Report, go to YouTube. If you're on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, like the video. We got stuff coming out all the time, even in the off off season. We never, ever, ever stop because we like this for whatever reason. But you can also hang out with me on social media. My name is RJ Ochoa. Just search for me any platform you want. The links are obviously down in the description below to your preferred social platform. You can hang out with me there. Thank you, everybody, for hanging out. I'm sorry that the Cowboys season is just about over, but I will say this, and I'll say it again, obviously, throughout the course of the rest of the season. My most favorite, absolute favorite part about doing this is, or about the Cowboys in general at this point, is just, I think about, and I say this a lot, but the high school version of myself who just had this immense passion for this and had no place to put it, had no channel, no pun intended, had no outlet. And that there are people on the internet who want to hang out with me and talk about the Cowboys, even though we're really frustrated right now, is just the coolest thing. So if I don't see you live or otherwise between now and then, my family and I, we want to wish you and yours a very Merry Christmas, a very Happy New Year. Blessings to you and yours throughout the 2026 year and beyond. It is my great honor and privilege to have some of your time, and I promise you I do not take it for granted. I cherish it and regard it as precious, and want to make sure that I give you the very best content that I possibly can. But yeah, let's go ahead and get out of here. And thanks so much, everybody, for hanging out. We will see you next time.